mainly it's the life connection, what you had with your parents, and what life did you live. So it's interesting when I was reading about this, Nuraya, that the fact is that her father wasn't a mom. She's from the British UK. And when I looked up her photo, she has been wearing like a hijab all her life, and how conservative her parents were. I read a little bit about her, that how she tried to be a perfect Muslim, a perfect daughter, pretty much like everything, and that's pretty interesting because like there's a lot of stuff that me and her have that are very similar, and where the plane crashes, right? So it's a lot of the stuff that she's done. It's very, very interesting. I'm not going to say it's a lie. It is that having a religious father, and then you move to the British UK and you learn their culture, you learn pretty much everything about them, right? So, like, I'm going to put on her interview and I'm going to answer a question because I was raised that way. I didn't have to wear a hijab. My parents never enforced me to wear anything. Yes, my mother prays 5 times a day and does all her fasting, does her namazes, all those things. But if there's one thing that she never enforced me to do is how to dress and like just be decent, right? She never forced me to wear a hijab. In fact, after my pregnancy, my mother didn't like me in a hijab. That's the crazy part. My mother did not like me in a hijab. She would always tell me to like, take it off and things like that. I wore it for my hair because my hair was really dried up in the sun. So I needed something to protect my hair. I didn't feel comfortable the way they were. So I started wearing hijab for 2 years. My mom would always criticize me, like, why you wear it and it doesn't suit you. And my husband never say anything at all. Mm-mm-mm. That's the interesting part. So I feel she comes from a really cultural thing, having a father who's really religious. And then she learned about other cultures. She learns about other traditions. But the question is, in her journey, where does the twist come in and why does she turn away from faith? And I'm going to get there. But first, we are going to watch her interview. And then I'm going to walk along and share my perspective because my perspective is very similar to hers, but I didn't convert. I didn't leave. I had more challenges than she ever did, but I didn't leave. So let's start. I'm going to put on her video and then answer some questions. Here we go. YouTube, share. Let me go to Twitter, make sure everything's showing on my screen. Like, here we go. Add to screen. Make this bigger. We're going to be watching this. Ready, guys? Okay, here we go. I'm going to play it, and we're going to listen to it, her interview. And then I'm going to answer some questions because a lot of her views is very similar to mine. Ready? Here we go.
Straight into it. I want to know a little bit about why you think progressives in the West, or just woke people, because I don't like that. Progressive annoys me because it suggests they're sort of better than people, why they are so quick to jump to the defense of Iran with what Iran actually is.
Yeah, I know it sounds like they're progressive and we're all regressive if we're not on the same kind of wavelength as them. But no, I think it's one of the kind of biggest paradoxes of our time, if you will. Like, it's identity politics gone mad, in my opinion. So I was actually speaking to a Iranian German author on my channel about this as well. And, it's kind of come down to the fact that post-World War II, especially Germany, but in general, the West kind of fell into this moral coma. And they were just acknowledging the fact that the West is inherently oppressive and,
I have a question for her. So she's saying it's like how it's a coma. Let me ask you something. When back in the early days, when she got married, what was Dubai at the time? Dubai is certainly not what it used to be. Let me tell you that much. So we're going to get to a lot of questions she stated in her interview. And it's funny because she stated a lot of the things that countries do today, but she didn't get to do them. And I'm going to lay down the facts. Hey, was it this or the country atmosphere? So like coma. I'm going to get to the coma part too. Was it the culture atmosphere of the country or was it the faith itself? So stay tuned. What she's stating in the interview. I'm going to show historical facts as she talks.
They're evil. And so we are now going to, I think she called it neo-universalism. Like, we are going to consider everybody morally innocent, especially Muslims. Like they got that kind of treatment going forward. And so couple that with anything anti-Western and anti-American hegemony or imperialistic, and you've got something like the Iranian regime getting kind of a free pass to do what they want. And Western progressives, especially even Western feminists, are seen to be defending the very same regime that is, against free speech, murdering women for dancing, executing gay people. And you just think, how have we got to this absurd point? But I think you also see it play out in like university campuses in the West here, where you've got student unions coming out and protesting in favor of Hamas and the Iranian regime. And it's kind of the same thing as that, okay, well, if they're anti-West, then they are morally protected for some reason. And so, yeah, it's a very strange era where you're having to stand up and speak for rights that you'd think they would, by default be against.
And I think that's interesting about the Second World War, post-Second World War. I hadn't actually thought of that. So it's sort of the West is this kind of axis of evil, and then so anything outside of it is morally pure. I suppose with Palestine or Gaza, it's still ridiculous, but okay, I get they think Israel is sort of boxed into this, and they're reacting because of Israel and so on, but they can't really say that about Iran, and that's why it's so bizarre to me, even more than with the gays for Gaza.
I agree with everything she's saying.
Iran stuff,
that's not where the stumping
pictures
comes
of the
in. We're not there
Ayatollah.
yet.
You've seen that, like people walking around London with that.
Yeah, I know. And again, it's just like, are you that anti-Western that you would vocalize theocratic rights for a theocratic brutalist regime like Iran just because of that? So your morality is suspended in that sense. And obviously there's parallels with the reasons that they do support Hamas as well. And it goes very deep, like even within our Western institutions. For example, I think it was King's College, University of London, or one of the other universities, in their politics textbooks, the very line that was there to refer to Hamas was one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Right. And I was shook that this is what you're teaching students. Like, what kind of morality are you instilling into the next generation?
This week, we're hosting a free trading and investing workshop right here in Houston. Inside this workshop,
Man, we're in trouble. And Iran's apparently, a lot of people are saying there was this sort of, we've attacked Iran out of nowhere, but I believe they were using Hamas and Hezbollah, especially as a sort of the proxy for their, so I mean, you could argue that Iran really started this, but what is Iran? It's sort of different ethnicities and things, isn't it? What's a simplistic overview of what Iran is?
Yeah, so and to my understanding, it's kind of like a mosaic of various ethnicities as well within Iran. So you've got the Persians, you've got the Kurds, you've got the Azeris, you've got the Arabs, you've got the Baluchis. And so this facade of the Islamic regime kind of, uniting them all is very thin, because behind it, you'll see the cracks severely there. And these minorities are kind of suffocated under the current regime, as you would expect under an Islamic theocracy. But any non-Persian language is not encouraged. And for example, the Kurds, they are disproportionately executed. And you have this thing where there are areas now, because obviously they make up various regions. They've been begging for a homeland since World War II, an autonomous region for the Kurds. But because the regime leaves them so impoverished, they're called Kolbaris, I think it is, or Kolbaris in Persian, where they are taking goods like tea and coffee across from Iranian-controlled where the Kurds are to the Iraqi side of the border, and the regime literally just shoots them down point blank. And similarly, the Balochis are kept severely impoverished, and they're some of the poorest. So you've got insane ethnic tension even behind this facade of the Islamic regime uniting all of Iran.
That's really interesting. And I think the Kurds, as I remember, that was in Iraq.
I'm going to skip through it a little bit because we already know things related to that.
In Iraq, that was
a little
this
ahead.
is something I remember Hitchens wrote about, that there was this feeling of right now everybody was very against the Iraq war, and I think that's the consensus, isn't it? But he was saying one thing people forget is that Saddam was just killing the Kurds, it was a genocide on Kurdish people, ridiculous, burying pits full of bodies, and he had to be stopped.
use them, but it turned out that no, they were the ones being the useful idiots for the Islamists. So it was kind of like a case of they were feeding the crocodile hoping it would eat them last, but they got devoured in the process, because within 2 years there were thousands and thousands of executions that took place.
Wow.
And I guess it should be like a stark warning to any of these kind of, I mean, here in the West, what's playing out now, to like these woke or gay activists who are, you know, holding up signs for free Palestine, that, you know, you are going to end up with the same fate if they were to ever get into power or have you under their control, because the Islamists are not your friends.
Do you think that might happen in the UK?
I sincerely hope not, but yeah, we're heading towards kind of, you know, very dangerous kind of situations lately. I think our institutions, a lot of them have been captured, and I think that rot runs very, very deep, and we're going to have to start something very drastic very soon to kind of change the entire collective mindset of society. I mean, you've seen the kind of demonstrations that take over London on the weekends. It's intimidating. If I was a Jewish person living in London, I would be extremely afraid to kind of be out there in the midst of that. And it runs through the NHS, it runs through schools, it runs through universities, and yeah, even beyond that, I'm sure we'll get into it.
Yeah, we have family members in Argentina who got my wife and I what's called a mezuzah. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's like, you'll have seen it if you're on like Jewish households.
This is going to end.
And do you think the grooming gangs here are a big part of that? What do you make of the feminists here? Their silence, often, not always, but I mean, there've been some. I mean, whenever someone says that, Julie Bindel
not a good start.
like, I was saying it from the beginning, but a lot of feminists were
It's
not.
just sharing the politics.
A lot of feminists were not.
That's
In fact,
not
I
where
think
the
there was
disagreements
more
come in.
silence than
Disagreements
people
come in
speaking
when
out,
she
because
cares
when
about
I moved
her
back to
marriage.
this country, after spending a good few years in the Middle East, I came back to hearing about it for the first time. And there were only a couple of people, one of them including Tommy Robinson, that I was hearing actually call a spade a spade. And now, even like being so immersed in the Vogue violence against women and girls sector in London, I've heard such little, even with the inquiry opening up now again. And generally, we're always talking about how we're supposed to support BAME women, and I hate that term, but black.
I haven't heard that in a while.
I know. I don't think we use it anymore. I don't know what the current word is, but it's global majority now.
Oh, don't. Wait, does that mean minorities? What a twisted way to say minorities.
Well, globally they're the majority, Andrew. So how dare you? You know, only here they're the minority, but globally.
That's a really interesting thing they've done.
I know,
because
it's not
they
exactly
go by
right.
a hierarchy by which the minority is the one that has the most power, right?
Of how
But
the leaders
they're
have
also
done stuff,
admitting that they are the global, which is what we're all saying as well. Yeah, but there's 2 billion Muslims.
Yeah.
What we're talking about. And they're admitting that and still somehow getting away with claiming it's a minority.
Yeah, exactly. And they're a minority, so they're vulnerable here. And we should acknowledge that in the world, they're the majority. So, you know, there's that due respect that we should give them anyway. But I digress. But basically, the point was that we're so fixated on providing a service and support mechanism to the most vulnerable segment of society, and they are viewed to be that. But when it came to something, we've seen there's been a big deafening silence from community leaders. And I understand that there's a, you know, kind of collective fear and guilt and shame and kind of all of this. But as a society, we really need to stop towing the line of racism and worried about what people are going to say in wider society is, because these girls deserve justice. And it's been a long time coming. Some of them are actually on sex offender lists themselves. So they've grown up now on the Gaza situation, and it wasn't good enough for the Muslims. And so suddenly they splintered off and became independent, and they ran solely based on preaching about Gaza. Nothing to do with the area that they were running for or how to better this country, but purely they were relying on the Gaza vote. And we're seeing more and more of them splinter off. And then the rhetoric that they're using is becoming increasingly dangerous. You've got these independent MPs standing there and saying like why the UK deserves, why they deserve to be here, and how their ancestors helped rebuild Britain, like really warped sense of history, how their ancestors helped rebuild Britain, and now it's their turn to take over, and it's the Muslim turn to take over. Some of them outright say we are here to enforce Sharia.
Okay, before we get to the Sharia part, this is where I'm going to explain. Okay, every 50 to 60, almost 70 years, if she, as a British, and when she stepped into the real world, she would also know that history has changed. Early days, like her first I'm not sure if anybody's seen recently her post regarding the African Americans, how she stated that, oh, African Americans were enslaved, but without having to forget, there were many slavery wars. For example, the Turkish were also enslaved by Arabs. These are educated by Arabs themselves. The Europeans also enslaved. Actually, Europeans have enslaved more Africans in history, and those comes to the group who were white people, right? And these are the things. So, like, if a book tells you something like that, you need to find the text sources and match the book. And I gave you two. Yes, Muslims did it to Africans somewhat, but it wasn't as hectic because it's called the African slave trade that is known in America, and that was done by Arabs. Then comes the European slavery over the Africans, which my friends would talk about a lot, who are Black. Yes. So when a context tells you something, you need to find the sources, that stuff that matches. Now, if your interpreter, like how she grew up, and her father was an imam telling her, oh, don't like this person because of a skin or that skin, without having to understand. Let me tell you a historical tale. My cousin actually is really, really dark skinned. And some people in the family did effort to find her a man or almost anything. And my uncle didn't want to let her go alone because of the early days, just how Nuraya said, how she was raised wearing a hijab. She wasn't allowed to go out, and how her dad raised her because of that tradition. So my cousin, she's in her late 30s and she still doesn't have a man. Some people feel like she's attractive and all, but she's dark skinned. And this is how it explains that being in the early days, based on what your skin looked like, it was not just worse, but many ethnic groups had issues with you, not just the Muslims. There's many. And I'm demonstrating my own cousin. She went through the same concept, and she still suffers it today when she's like, in her 70 years old, because of the way she looked like. She's having a difficult time being elected for marriage or find a man. It's something that is in, but we are going to continue, and I'm going to throw historical questions, share my screen after her marriage interview. That's the one that I really want to debate on, when she got married.
Yeah, like that's our goal, unapologetically. And I think we need to really clamp down as a nation if we're allowing that kind of rhetoric to be spoken about so freely, and have these people. We've got people like Naz Shah as well, who stands up in Parliament and says that her tweeting that these white girls who are abused should shut their mouths for the sake of diversity now, because it's all come back into light, was an accident. But still, kind of throwing all Pakistanis into one group is not doing any good for the society. So even now, when she's backed into a corner, she dares to call that an accident and still say, oh, but we shouldn't tarnish one group of people. And their defense is always that, oh, but there's also white perpetrators. It's the most baseline argument. We live in a white majority country.
Yeah. They don't understand pro rata.
They really don't.
So, Nuraya, so as you, as a Pakistani Muslim who grew up with the British, born with the British, you must understand that it's 2026, and the rejection of Africans and the rejection of people being white, that conflict is going to continue for a lifetime. If you are saying that it's suddenly today, you being a British without having to understand, this is centuries ago. This conflict has never ended. Based on what you're talking about in your interview with Andrew Gold, this conflict has never ended. It's almost 600, 700 years old, way farther, way before Muhammad arrived. Study about the Europeans. In fact, ancient times, there were some Egyptians who had the same problem too, based on what you look like, what your skin color is like. You are going to be, rejected. So if your interpretation is suddenly today, then honey, you're missing something from real old history. One eschatology of the Quranic verse is not going to complete history that has been happening for decades. Continue.
And disproportionality.
So that was Naz Shah, and she actually tweeted something like, these white girls better shut their mouth for the sake of diversity.
Yeah.
You're one sentence away from launching your website with Base 44. Since the beginning of the internet, there's never been such a fun...
It was, and thank goodness people at Screen and the internet never forgets, right? She tried to, but the internet never forgets.
It's amazing that the word diversity. It's so funny. You look back at every regime. I always think about, either the Bolsheviks or the Stasi, whatever. They've always got these little weird words that sound quite fuzzy and friendly, and things like the global majority. Oh, that's nice. What's that? And diversity. Well, that's our strength, isn't it? That's lovely. And they were also told, but remember, just because you wrote this irrational belief, it doesn't mean it's actually true.
Yeah, and how dangerous it can be in the long run. Like, obviously, that's what Hitchens was hinting at, that it might be seductive, but at the end of the day, it's going to subordinate you at some level, or you're going to have to pay the price with, your own soul, so to speak. But again, we just back to the Iran point, for example, when the revolution was kicking off, in 1979, in the 70s itself, the darling of this identity-obsessed left, Michel Foucault, he actually called the Ayatollah's regime a spiritual revolution, and he actually called it political spirituality. And obviously the left buys that and backs it, despite it turning into the theocratic, horrible, brutalist state that we see today.
It's mad that no matter how many times history repeats itself, people just can't seem to see it. Or there's a large enough group of people who, it's almost like they are doing that English literature practice. They're looking at Iran and looking and they're going, how can we make the most irrational belief true? And that's what Foucault was all about, wasn't it? And Foucault also believed in adult-child relations, I believe.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
well, because there was no real truth to him. Exact truth.
So why not?
Exactly. Yeah.
Anything.
And power, actually a movement started by a lady called Masih Alinejad, and she was the voice of the voiceless for Iranian women, basically, who were stuck back in Iran. And it was on Wednesday you were to wear white, or you were to take off your hijab or wear a white hijab. But it was like a subtle yet defiant protest. And a lot of women would put a little pole and their white hijab on that and kind of wave it around and record themselves and send it to her. So it became a social media protest against the Islamic regime and the morality police. And it was kind of their way of rebelling. And it just spread like wildfire.
That's a really beautiful image. You can imagine, again, the film of that, 10 years later, they make a film of that and they show people in Britain taking to the streets, leftists, and not supporting those people, but supporting the Ayatollah.
Yeah, exactly. And where are the Western feminists when it comes to that? Apparently, no, they'd rather choose the Ayatollah as opposed to these women. I mean, listen to the women of Iran. What are they saying? They're actually saying we want to break these shackles of the Islamist regime.
Okay, so this is where I'm going to throw some stumper questions. Okay, Nuraya, if you are intelligent enough, you know that USSR was Russia, right? Early days of USSR, women were prisoned in Russia and they weren't allowed to have any freedom. They weren't literally allowed to do anything versus the men. There's documents to prove it. Before the Ayatollah regime, there's something you must know, that yes, the Prince Reza Pahlavi, yes, he was a Muslim, but he also gave rights to other religions. There's another leader, as a Muslim, who's not part of Muslim world anymore because you chose based on your experience of your marriage, which I'm going to get there. And I'm going to share my experience being married too, that not a lot of people know about. I think it's time to bring it to the light. So Prince of Iraq, Prince of Pahlavi, he gave all the ladies freedom, and he gave religious practices of other faiths, which is why there's different type of Jews or different type of Christians who lived at the time. They could live and practice. But the Ayatollahs did not do that in 1979. There we go, back to the religious leaders again. What's the difference between Mohammed bin Salman, who wants the people to be more advanced, versus the current leaders who are in charge as you know it? When you clearly stated in this video that you used to live in Saudi Arabia, you got rights to drive, you got rights to watch a movie, you got rights to do things. That was the leaders who let the country do those things. It wasn't the religious book, it was the country. As we go, watch her. She's clearly going to state those things, that, hey, I got to go to a movie. Hey, I got to drive. Hey, I got to do these things because the country allowed it. Now, when you got married, that's where I'm going to have questions for you again, because it's going to be me as an American Muslim and you as a British ex-Muslim, differences between our marriage, same concept. What did you run away from versus I tolerated and to a really high level of experience today to share to the world versus yours, and I'm going to get there. So my question to you is, when the country has given you freedom. Was it the religion? Was it the country giving you freedom? Or was it the book of eschatology that you grew up from your father? And we are going to get there. So it's pretty interesting how you say certain things, but not understand politics itself. And it's pretty interesting because without the politics or running in the country, nobody has a play. But yeah, stay away, listen away.
You know, they don't speak for us, they don't represent us, but apparently, again, that doesn't fit their narrative, and so they'd rather side with people like the Ayatollah in that regime.
Who is this Ayatollah guy? Is the Ayatollah is like a role, isn't it? And so if he dies, another one becomes Ayatollah.
Yeah. So I come from a Sunni background, so all of this is also very like interesting and weird to me because we have a huge Sunni and Shia divide. So even as a Muslim, everything the Shias do, you think, oh, well, that's weird, and everything we do, they think that's well weird. And there's like this unspoken hatred.
She's from a Sunni family, by the way. Sunni Wahhabis are father, but listen away.
Yeah. So when I realized what the Ayatollah concept was, it's kind of like he's the man, the leader in waiting until they're waiting for the return of their hidden imam. Right. So there's a Shia imam that will return towards the end of days, basically. And this imam currently is, I mean, in the Western sense, it's kind of like the divine right to rule. But in a Shia Islamic sense, and he has that divine authority. There's a terminology for it in Islam as well called like waliyat-e something, where he's like the jurist of Islam.
Right.
So yeah, essentially he's God's authority on earth at the moment. And in a perfect state, he should be expanding that role beyond Iran.
I see. And what's his name? He's, what is it? That guy? The
Ayatollah Khamenei.
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't want to say that name because I'd just get it wrong.
She's out of the start for Ayatollah. No rejection there.
I honestly don't know much except for the fact that he was exiled. He was in self. No, he wasn't. He was actually properly exiled, I think, to France. And that's when the leftists thought, let's use him to prop up this ring. They're willing subjects to Islam, if you will, to some degree. But in Iran, the case seems so different, especially from a woman's perspective. I was like, every Iranian that I've met, they openly say, we're not Arabs, we hate Islam. Islam is not our religion. And I was like, wow, like, what is this bravery? Where do you guys get this from? And
okay, freeze, babe. This is where history does come in. So, although the Iranians are not lying, their history starts with the Sephardi dynasty. If you read a little bit about that, yes, the Arabs did came through because I keep telling this over and over. I don't know why ex-Muslims, it's not hitting in their heads. They're Arabized because the prophets were Arabs, and Christians, they spread their religion to conversion too, because every land was pagan. You got Christianized. Same for the Muslims. You got Arabized. There's a difference here because Christianity and Islam itself is not an ethnic group, but it was bought from an ethnic group, which were Arabs. That's how you got Arabized. So I hope you understand that what you're saying. Yes, they are not Arabs. You heard correct. They are from the early days of Persia with mixed ethnic groups. And yes, the religion was bought, but their background comes from the Sephardi dynasty, if you read a little bit about that.
And then I realized, wow, you have to go through a regime like dealing with the Ayatollahs to come to that conclusion. Maybe if Pakistan had the full brunt of Sharia law put on it, Pakistanis would rise up in the same way.
You'd hope so.
You'd hope so, yeah. But then you've got Afghanistan, where the majority of them still prefer Taliban rule. And granted, you know, a lot of the country is very rural and they're quite conservative and uneducated. So they naturally just go for what they think is their source of redemption, i.e. the Taliban. But in Iran, you actually see them saying, this is not my religion, this is not my regime.
That's so.
Yes, sweet pea. If somebody, if I convert to Christianity and I married a Christian, let's say if it abused me, it forced me to convert to Christianity by force, and it made its own personal desires, then I would want to leave Christianity. If my own religion did those things, knowing that some places, first freedom comes from your parents. If your parents never gave you freedom or educated you freedom, that yes, you have freedom to live, or at least when they got you married, based on where they got you married, did not fight for your freedom and did not encourage whoever they got you married to for freedom, there's a difference. That's your parents' perspective. So based on how the Iranian women live, because the Iranian women never had freedoms, it's common for them to scream, yell, do almost what they're pretty much doing today. And that's no lie, but everything you are saying, you're on the right track somehow. But some of the stuff you just need to look deep within. But keep going ahead. It's some of the stuff, yeah, we're gonna get there. The tricky part is once we're gonna review her marriage.
So interesting, a sort of urban compared to a rural country with Islam in it.
Excuse me, you're reading wrong. Put these on. Show me your book. I'm going to take a picture of it.
That's really interesting.
And also the fact that I think you really need to get a taste of real Sharia to want to overthrow it.
It'll be too late by that time over here, won't it?
Yeah, let's overthrow it before that.
I saw someone saying that they should make Iran, it should be called Persia, and it would be like a marketing PR thing, like if they sort of overthrew this story. But that was some time.
Those two things, really.
And when did you start to move away from that?
Okay.
We moved to
This is where we need to review, okay? I'm going to share my experience, and she's telling her experience. She's an ex-Muslim. I'm still a Muslim. I never converted or moved to another religion. Yes, I have experiences listening to other faiths, being around other faiths, know their cultural practices. I know all those things, traditions, everything, because I grew up with mixed people. But did I convert? No. So listen to her story, and then I'm going to share my story. And then I'm going to have a little questions for her as of experience. Like, if she was in my podcast media right now in front of my face, I would probably ask her this on camera. But here we go. Listen to her experience versus the experience that I had in marriage. And this should be very interesting. But yes, go ahead.
Dubai after Saudi Arabia, and I thought, oh, this is nice. This is like a Islam light. Like, I hear the call to prayer. We get all the holidays, but I can drive.
See, she literally says it, that she could drive, she could go to the movies, things that, because in ancient times, Saudi Arabia, words from my sister-in-law, that you didn't have the same rights as you do now, words from my mother-in-law. So back at the time, someone like her, if she got married, she would not enjoy her, times there. She's saying it, that she got to drive, she got to have some rights, but her life changed when she moved to Dubai. Dubai is not what it used to be. It used to be what she lived, but it's not what it is today. Keep listening, and then I'm going to share some facts that I do have for her, that why, when she talks about emotional stress, she got emotional stress. Well, I actually know a couple of men who I met, and I still have questions for. They got married 3 times, and none of the girls were satisfied, and they didn't want to commit to this man. And we were friends, but he could never feel comfortable telling me about his relationship, knowing how long I was married and how many breakups he had. But listen away.
I can go out with boys. I can go to the cinema. Cinema exists. In Saudi Arabia, you had to drive across the border to Bahrain just to go to the cinema.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's no cinema in Saudi Arabia?
Not when I was there, no.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, and people would be making like moonshine in their houses, and everything like was just an ordeal. And yeah, it was like doing a drug deal to go watch a movie or get a pirated copy.
Bloody hell. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're in Dubai, and yeah.
So in Dubai, everything seemed like, oh, this is an Islam I can get behind. You know, they've got one step in the modern kind of Western world. This is like a taste of how London life would be. But also we hold on to our Islamic religiousness.
She's right about that. So like what she means by London life is like where she grew up from, where she went to school, how she grew up, and who she hung out with, her London life, and then of course her faith versus herself. So keep listening. This is something interesting. After this is probably I'm going to exit out the video because the rest is not super important, but yeah, listen away.
And that's kind of when I was getting more and more, I was introduced to so many people from different backgrounds, and I heard of religions that I'd never heard of before, like the Druze religion, a lot of, from people from Lebanon. And I was like, that's cool. They get the best of both worlds, Islam and Christianity. I came across a lot of Shia friends as well and realized how much they were persecuted by Sunnis. And so there was a lot of kind of mentally, like kind of groundbreaking stuff I was absorbing as a young teenager, and kind of, internalizing myself as what do I stand for, what do I not. But then coming back to the UK again, I was exposed to British values, and you think to yourself, oh, okay, I've got some gay friends and I've got this, but
so it seems like to me, all her life, she was used to her British values compared to another culture value. So like what I mean by another culture value is like, for example, if she moved back to all her life, she lived in Pakistan, or all her life she lived in Saudi Arabia, and not that means she was still addicted to her life in the British, right? And the way I could say that, because when I actually got married, and my husband, actually, I never really talk about my family for security purposes, but like my husband knows what culture am I from and what is suitable for me, what is not suitable for me. In fact, when I travel with him, he tells me that no, don't go over there because the people are not going to understand you're from this culture. It's safe if you stay over here. First, I felt he's not letting me go like I ordinary would, but then when I discovered for myself, and since he knew that, Monsieur, I'm like, okay, you go. I'm not going over there, or I'm not going to sit with those people. You go in because he's from that place, and you'd be like, okay, you stay here. Don't go over there because those people are messed up, you know. So these type of things help. If she could not let go of her country values and not attract with another tradition values, that's called a personal preference. That's a personal preference. Now keep listening, and that's what I didn't understand about her. Either you should have married someone from the British who was a Muslim, who had the same British values as you being a Muslim, versus a Muslim from a Muslim country. But listen away.
Actually, I'm supposed to hate you. My religion tells me to hate Christians. It tells me to hate Jews. But here we are all coexisting perfectly. You know, we like each other. I don't want these people to burn in eternity in hell. So all of those things were happening on an internal level. But it wasn't until a life experience happened to me when I had gone back to Dubai as an adult and got married that made me kind of really just snap out of the faith.
This was an arranged marriage?
It was not an arranged marriage, but it was you have to get married situation.
So like, it seems like she liked the guy, because when I looked up her boyfriend, it seemed like she was fine. And if she's saying it that, oh, it was not an arranged marriage, it's, oh, but you have to get married. So you could say it's both. Like, she got to know the guy, keeping her British values and keeping her British traditional values, how she grew up, who she grew up with, being around people, and getting to know the guy. You could say she did those things, talk to the guy, and then tell her parents, okay, we spoke for a couple of months, 6-7 months. I'm okay marrying the guy. You can put it like that based on when she says that statement. That's clearly what that means. That, hey, her parents like the guy, or she chose the guy. We spoke for a couple of months, but I'm ready to meet the guy. So continue. This is where I'm going to share my story as well as versus her ex-Muslim experience. This is where it would get interesting.
Because we can't leave you unmarried. An unmarried Muslim girl is a liability in our culture. You can't have fun until you're married. You can't travel. So it's actually like your path to freedom.
It's pretty interesting because my aunt just went through a divorce. I'm not going to get to the details because my aunt was mean, but she's happy with her life. She refuses to get married, and how my sister-in-law, her husband has died, and she refuses to get married again, and she's happy with her grandchildren. So society is not what it is. People want it to be, but once you learn that, hey, you do have the option to say no once you get older and you get a little wiser, then yeah. But based on how she grew up, it sounds like based on her father being an imam, she didn't really have those choices, but listen away.
Wow.
Essentially, yeah.
And what happened when you married this man?
Well, very quickly, the marriage fell apart. Like I had no idea. I had grown up in thankfully quite a healthy, well, as far as I know, a healthy environment in terms of like, it wasn't abusive or anything. But then living with him, I was experiencing things I'd never experienced before, to the point where I was becoming like a shell of myself as a person. I was very outgoing, and I started, watching TED Talks about why do I feel depressed and things like that. And then I think one day he said something to me, and I actually Googled it thinking, is that normal for someone to say to another person, especially like if you're, your intimate partner? And the Google page came out with 10 signs you're being emotionally abused. And that was the first time.
Okay, so this is where I'm going to share my experience. Although I feel like based on what she said, it could be a little bit better what she said, emotional abuse. No, because I've seen men who's a Christian who became atheist with time. He had 3 marriages, and all his girlfriends I know who refused to still be with him. He may be attractive and all with looks, but girls don't want to be with him due to his childish problems, right? So I don't think that's the thing. So like my past, I don't really like to talk about this on camera, and how just because now people are going to say and give me all the criticism I could possibly get and say, oh, but that is the religion, or this is Islam, and give me all the criticism I could possibly get. So we met. He used to work at my dad's convenience store, and how we met at one or two weddings, and he would always like to see me walking around talking to his people and things like that in the wedding, right? So one day he just tells my father that, like, in the previous past or whatever, right? So then my previous past, after everything, it made me realize that, okay, I've been through trauma, I've been through things, and it changed my family stuff forever. It changed it forever. And it made my dad realize what I've been through because I was beaten up. I was actually abused, beaten up on the ground. I had blood on my body, everything, all those things. So, and just like the book says, I was trying to be a good wife, but I was also naive. I didn't know too much back then as much as I know now. So I hid from my parents. I wasn't allowed to talk to my parents. And in her case, if she calls that, that's physical abuse. Now, emotional abuse is that if your man has kept you in the house and you are not satisfied with that lifestyle, and your partner feels like you can stay in the house, which some of the people have done in the early ages. There is such thing as a housewife. Many cultures have done it compared to how life is today. So if you are not satisfied listening to your husband being in the house all the time, then that's something that has affected your personality, and you felt like you couldn't continue this lifestyle. And I bet you that's what triggered you to leave and break your marriage and just take passport. And of course you would get assumptions like, oh, this is what it is, this is what religion's like. But I tell you, I did it too. I had this experience too. Yes, I did. And did I run? No, I didn't. In fact, not a lot of many people know this. When I had my baby, his second wife wrote to me and asked me, like, how is this person a bad person? And like, I'm afraid of him. He's so abusive and all, he's so loud. And I'm like, look, if you're smart, you will say no to him. And my second person, who I've been married to, I've been with him 19 years. He never told me what I need to wear, what I need to dress like. Yes, I dress a little bit elegant. And the fact is that my mother-in-law even says that, hey, if you were a little bit like your mom, she would not stay with me, but she likes my personality and I'm okay with her too. And me and my husband, we have our differences. We don't argue. We became strong with time, but when my past, that yes, he was abusive. So what has that taught me? At first, I was not ready to commit because I felt like this is what it is, or this is what marriages feel like. What she is talking about, that, oh, this is what a marriage is supposed to be, and I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be part of this type of marriage and things like that. No, it just shows that you are still used to your British culture. And the best life for you as in the future is to get someone married from the British. Like, if I show you photos of my family, some of them wear hijab, some of them don't wear hijab because they're all born in America and they have the American culture, mixed American Muslim culture, right? And some of the cousins, they did get their fiance from Pakistan, but that does not mean they don't have their religious values, like pray 5 times a day, fast, whatever. And one of my cousin's wife, she chooses to wear a hijab because she's been in hijabi all her life. So there's no excuse for the hijab. However, based on emotional preferences and how you're saying that, oh, this desired me to leave, it just showed a clear answer. You should have never left your British culture, and you should have got married from the British. Find a Muslim man who's part of the British culture. That would have been the best cure for you than to say that, because saying that you were emotional abuse is no thing, because that just shows that you are not used to that culture back at the time when UAE had. UAE, based on what is today, females work, they drive, they do whatever. My cousin's wife, they all do work. They work at a bank, they work at a hospital, all those females work. And yes, they do fasting, they do praying, they've been to Saudi Arabia for their thing. So that's no place where you could say it's the religion. It's the back when what UAE was, and you were not satisfied based on your husband's way of life. That's the best way I could put it. I've lived it. I've been abused in it. And it took me like 2-3 years to ever say yes again to a partner. But like how it took us a couple of years. And even after getting beaten up, took me a couple of years to open up to my husband and say why. But based on now we are 19 years together and it's about to be 20 next year, that's a strong relationship. I say sometimes that I think if I were to ever, I don't think I could get remarried again and probably just live my life the way it is. But like, seriously, if you say is that I don't think it's a culture, I feel like it is your partner, because there's many partners who cannot decide what they want from life. And once they cannot decide what they want from life, they take it out on, well, you. But listen away what she says. That's my personal preference. I disagree with what she says there. Okay. Let me play the video.
I'd heard those words, and then I realized, oh my God, like, no, he's controlling the money as well. He's not letting me work. All of these things that are kind of keeping me stuck in this position where I feel like shit basically every day. And
what had he said to you?
Pardon?
What had he said?
I went through EMDR therapy, and I've actually forgotten what that line itself was. But I remember thinking, I wouldn't say that to my worst enemy. Is that normal? It's actually even hard for me to retell it now because it's like a different lifetime. It's EMDR like wipes these memories from your brain. That's why I can kind of like smile about it now as I talk. Before I just used to, like, tears would just drop nonstop. But yeah, I think, and again, that's kind of propelled me to do the work that I'm doing now, is because I didn't even know these things existed. I didn't know the word gaslighting. I didn't know.
Of course you didn't, because your father was an imam, and an imam who literally encourages you that, no, we have to get you married. It's part of the tradition. He's an Islamic eschatologist. And in your childhood, you weren't really to have friends until, I'm not sure, were you born in the British or like, were you born in Pakistan? That I don't know. If you moved, then yes, definitely this is normal for you, that your father is not going to tell you those things. My parents, however, they did teach me those things. Yes, I'm going to show you a couple of photos, what my families look like. You're going to see some in hijabs and some that are not in hijabs. And they're all Pakistani, by the way. And no, my parents did teach me those things. My parents did advise me who should I say no to, be respectful. And they did educate me about Jews and Christians living in a Christian country. They did educate me where you need to be tolerable in certain places where you should just let go with the flow, things like that. These are the things that parents come first. If your eschatology father who taught religion did not feed in your head from the start, then that is something you should ask your family. Because your family, if they move to another culture country, being a teacher, they have to go with the flow or things are going to get well out of control. And you can't blame religion. Every country, rather UAE culture is not going to be like the Saudi Arabia culture. Qatar is not going to be like Berlin culture. They both have their different preferences and what they wish to follow. That's the same thing exactly here. So if your father was an Islamic eschatologist and he never told you those things, when you entered the real world, then yes, obviously you are going to face problems, which what you're saying exactly in your interview. My family did, which is why I never had to face those things. Yes, I had to rightfully say no, rightfully say yes, where I feel agree with certain things, and rightfully say yes or no to in both ways. And that's how I was raised as a Muslim. No, I had the authority to say in other countries that no, I choose to wear this shirt. This is what I'm wearing because my parents did educate me that no, you are allowed to do those things. And from my past, I've learned a lot that where the enforcement was compared to where I stand today. And I learned from that. Certain things that parents do not realize, especially someone who had an Islamic scholar father. She should have told you all those things so it would have made a good impact in your life to survive. But since he never told you those things, now when you go through trauma on your own, you discover for yourself, and there are certain things that encourage you to just step away from because your parents never told you. My parents did, and I'm going to show those photos and proof how I was raised and based where I stand today. Even after trauma, I stand.
Know what stonewalling was. I didn't know what breadcrumbing was. I didn't know all of these kind of psychological abuse manipulation tactics. But essentially, long story short, when I found out and I tried to leave, the control extended to, how dare you try and divorce me? Like, there's no way you're leaving this situation. You're mine forever. And in order to do that, he found a lawyer that put this really, really ancient Sharia law on me, which relates directly back to a Quran verse about the disobedience of a wife, called nushuz in Arabic.
Okay, so this is where I am going to review that disobedience of a wife. Okay, her life versus my life. I feel like it's so important to say at this sentence where she said, "Oh, Sharia law on me," and how she's doing the Sharia law on me. You're my wife. Okay, so I don't really share the story on camera. It's like the forbidden story of my past. I don't really like to bring it on camera. But if she is listening and Tommy Robinson is listening, I think it's time. So, based on what that verse says, and I actually had a life like that I told to some of the Holocaust survivor lawyers in Israel, is that I was in a time, and even though I knew the person, but I felt like even knowing enough was just not enough. When I went to his house, and I wasn't allowed to talk to my family, I wasn't allowed to keep in touch with any of my siblings, I wasn't even allowed to have the telephone. And he would make me do all the work of the house, everything, and he would force what I wear. And there were certain times, yes, don't like to talk this about on camera. He would beat me up, and then how did I do? Just like how she's saying, oh, I tried to be a good wife and things like that, and stuff I went through. That to a point, after my face and my skin was scarred up, everything, even my April Park friends knew me from the neighborhood, but since kids were naive at that age, they couldn't really help me. So at that time till now, then a doctor told me that no, you will have to break this marriage or you're going to die, because my body, my eye, my lips, they were all punched out. I couldn't talk anymore. Everything was scarred up. Even so, I went back. Then I gave another chance, just like how she's saying that the book said be a good wife. I ditched my father and give the guy another chance. After that, the doctor blew me out and he said that no, you cannot stay with him. And even after lying, what some people say takia, because you're trying to be a good wife, make things work. In age 18, he lied about his age, he lied about his history, lied about almost everything you could possibly think of. So the doctor's like, yeah, I just want a yes or no answer from you that did he ever hit you? And I couldn't hide it anymore because my bodies, he had the scars, everything. When she didn't go through those things, I did. And even after, so after that, my father sent him to jail and all these things. And like my views of my father completely changed compared to her father. Her father was an Islamic eschatologist. And it amazes me that she didn't go through the things that I did, that I had to face when her father was an Islamic eschatologist. I was beaten up raw. I couldn't see for months. I only had one eye that was focusing compared to my other eye. That's how beaten up I was. Went through trauma for 4 or 5 years until I said yes again to my husband, who was really decent. And yes, so that taught me a lot. That taught me a lot. That changed me a lot. That changed my visions a lot. Now, I could have been like her and say, oh, it's the religion. I don't want to be like this. When I lived it, I lived all those things, what she's talking about, but I didn't throw it away. I gave it another chance. And my father made restrictions after that no, I'm going to look into every family, their culture, their lifestyle. And he says it after that marriage. He said to my sister that no, if my daughters are from this culture, yes, it's okay if they do namaz. It's okay if they wear hijab. It's okay if they do the fasting and read the Quran in their house. But another country culture preferences, my daughters are not going over there. And that's it. From that time till now, he tells me that no, get your kid married to a Muslim man over here who's from this culture. So you are from the British Muslim culture compared to the UAE culture back then to what it is now. You're from the UAE British Muslim culture. You should have married a British Muslim man who's part of the same culture as you compared to UAE, what it was before. And after learning that, and now what? I'm about to be 39 years old. And when I go see my husband's family and things like that, he knows this is my culture, that's his culture. And he tells me where to stay away from and where you're going to be all right. And in fact, when some people try to point a finger at me from being from the West, he's the one who reasons with them that, okay, look, don't yell at my wife, that she's from this culture and I'm okay with that. If you guys live here, that is your problem. But don't point at my wife. I'm sorry. It's all about the culture, and the religion is not the culture. So if you're man, you didn't understand the culture. You didn't understand the culture because you are a British Muslim. You grew up with British culture. You grew up with British traditions. You grew up with British men traditions compared to UAE, what it was back then. You are not used to being in the house because you grew up in the British. You grew up being around with public everybody. So this is something I'll never understand when ex-Muslims say, oh, it was like this. Okay, for example, if I were to pause her video for a minute and I'm going to share something else that I want to show on my screen, then you would know if people say it's the religion. Did you know that Lindsay Lohan's husband is a Kuwaiti Arab? I didn't even know that. That took me a while to really understand that Lindsay Lohan's husband is a Kuwaiti Arab. I can share that on my screen. I'm willing to. But yes, Lindsay Lohan married a Muslim, someone who has been through drugs, almost anything you could possibly think of. She didn't marry someone from America. She married someone from UAE, and this is her husband. And they got married in 2022. They are still together. And she married someone from the UAE because UAE is from a different culture today. It's not the same culture what it was yesterday. It makes a difference when you change your country cultures and practices and things like that. It makes a really much of a difference what you say to the world. If you're just going to say it's the religion, well, there's many people who still practice the religion, marry different culture Muslims, then it's not the religion because they're doing the same thing as you are and living, but just within a different culture atmosphere. Like Berlin is not going to match Qatar. They have their own personal preferences. And UAE is not going to match Saudi's customs, the Muslim Arab countries, but they're not going to match the customs. And that is something I want people to understand. You can't just say it's the religion. I shared my experience. I was married just like her. Yes, I was. I shared it. I shared it as of experience that what I lived, the things that I had to deal with. And still, did I give up? No, I didn't. Here it is. Take a look. This is Lindsay Lohan's husband. He's a Kuwaiti Arab. Is he Arab? Yes, he is Arab. He's an Arab. He's from Kuwait, and he's an Arab. If somebody says suddenly into blank mode, like how could Lindsay Lohan marry him? Yes, they are together, and I believe she has a baby. You see, there it is. Kuwaiti Lebanese aside living together in Dubai as of lifestyle today. And I bet a lot of people from India already knows that the famous hero named Sunil Shetty, his wife was a Muslim as well. She's still Muslim today, and I believe his father, Sunil Shetty's father, was a Muslim mother married to a Hindu girl. So these are dumb things when people say oh gee, it's the religion. No, if you are part of the UK culture, you should have married someone from the UK. The problem is that your father never gave you those opportunities and never made you realize that, hey, there is something else in the world. He always raised you the old traditional way, being a Muslim father, and things like this is how it should be. And I'm telling you, I have a Muslim father too. That fact, you think my husband would cover me going to Israel by myself without telling my father? Yes, my husband did the covering. And these are all myths, man. I want real questions, and I'm showing you real eschatology stuff coming from the person who went through trauma. This is all myth. Don't post myth on my things here. These are myths. People make stuff all the time. Go find me real historical sources, real chapters, and mine's one of them. I lived trauma. Now my second concept, I've been 19 years together with one person, no abuse, no anything, and we know each other's differences. And my question here is that if she knew, I just said this not even a minute ago. Iran is not Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is not UAE. Everybody has their customs. Okay? Russia is not America. America is not UK. They have their customs. And if you want to keep where your country custom is from, that's what you should be doing. She should have got married to the British. She should have found a British Muslim to marry. This is the stuff that people learn later, much later in life, that, okay, if this is the customs I want to follow, then yeah, I should have stayed and I should have never got married to someone from UAE. It's not because it's an Islamic country. It's because
and the Quran verse is if you fear disobedience, it's from the same verse about the wife beating 434. If you fear disobedience, they've extended it in Sharia law. So in the Quran, you can beat them, admonish them. In the law, you can do other things.
And this is why I'm going to pause, because I lived it. I don't think she knows, but I lived it. She took her passport and ran directly to British and just throw it away, being an ex-Muslim, who she is today. So yes, after the doctor find out, and you think my father got away with it? No, as an Pakistani American Muslim, and all my cousins in lifestyle, they took a stand. They sent him to jail. They got the parents gave him death threats that you're going to be deported whether you like it or not, because my cousin is the American lieutenant officer back in the day, based on where he stands today. And a lot of the people knew my family in New York, and they couldn't take it, so they sent him to at least 7 to 8 years of prison for everything he's done, and through a lawyer, everything that he's committed. And I gave proof for that, right? Now, people would think like, oh, was it your religion? No, my second partner didn't do those things. My second partner was very patient with me, and we built an understanding. He's from Pakistan, I'm an American, and we've been together for 19 years and now a child after 9 years, and we build a strong understanding. But it's all about if you understand each other's culture. She's from the UK culture, but since her father is an Islamic eschatologist, her father never educated her these things. Today, I guarantee if her father ever told her that, look, there are going to be certain things you're going to have to deal with, and I want you to be prepared for it, I guarantee she would not go through those problems. And if anybody is bombarding me on my comments, then listen carefully. Iran is not Saudi. Saudi is not UAE. Berlin is not Qatar. They all have their separate preferences. Jordan is not Kuwait. They all have their separate rules and traditions of how they want to do certain things. Do you not see black and white people argue all the time in local America? Yes or no? That's a simple question. Yes or no? Yes, they do. They do. My friend, this is his third marriage. His name is Rob. I'm not going to say his last name. This is his third marriage. He was a Christian, then he became atheist because girls could not tolerate his problems anymore. Now, do you want to say religion, or is it the person's personality? You can say it. Come on, I'm looking for the best excuse you could possibly throw at me. Is it the religion, or is it the person's personality? He bought a house. He finally did a baby after so many years, but the girls, it didn't work again. Third marriage, broken. I would say, is he going to get married the fourth time? I don't know. Broken. Why broken? Did they have a house? He finally paid his credit off, whatever you need to do. Why did they not agree with each other? He had emotional problems, trauma, and stuff didn't work with his father. Now, is he going to get married the fourth time? Am I going to say religion? No. There are people like that. And based on what she's telling me, that I grew up with I had to return to UK and the British. I had to return to UK and the British. When I'm an American Muslim myself from America, grew up with American customs, but I married a Pakistani man. I made it work. Now, if she loved that culture, my best advice is she should have married someone from the British who's a Muslim and who understands her value, her traditions being a British. Back in the day, UAE was not what it is today. Saudi Arabia was not what it is today. It's on the leader. As you can see, after many years, Mohammed bin Salman gave the announcement that ladies can drive, and we're not going to set restrictions on them. Some dress code is coming slowly. That's coming too. But back in the early days, when my sister-in-law lived in Saudi Arabia, you were not allowed to drive, and the women were not allowed to leave their house. And she's the one who told me, as a preference, someone who lived there, that in the early day, her husband didn't want her to wear a burqa. Could you imagine that, based on what you're listening from ex-Muslims? Her own husband didn't want her to wear a burqa. But she chose to wear that darn burqa where you cover your face on your head because she didn't like the atmosphere. Now, places like Iran and Afghanistan say it's not a national law. It's not even in the book. But since selling your females out and females give birth to children, it's a lot of responsibility to take care of females. That's why females are in worse condition in these places, because men do not want to take responsibility for them. Men want responsibility for themselves in the country. Their rights, their needs, their powers, and that's how it's been. And that's what people don't get. But it is what it is. So listen away what she has to say. I'm probably going to end it after that and share some pictures. But yeah, listen away to her last statement.
To return you forcibly back to the house because you're a disobedient wife and your husband doesn't want to let you go, and you can't leave without his permission. So to my British trained mind, because I'd gone to uni and studied law, I was like, that's kidnap.
Yeah.
That no judge would allow that, no law, no court, nobody's going, this is ridiculous. Except Dubai operates Sharia law and judges do consider that. So I thought we were going to have play it out.
Okay, so the way the Sharia law thinks, because I said I lived it, nobody can tell me to my face. I didn't face trauma for nothing. I lived it. So when people say that you are mine, they mean like you're my responsibility now since the parents already threw you for marriage, just like how she stated before that, we cannot leave you alone. It's just according to the responsibility, we have to get you married, right? So when you do that, and when you sign the nikah papers, not anymore, but in the early days, men used to think like, okay, you are fully my responsibility, and that responsibility could mean I can do whatever I want with you or treat you however I want. You're not your parents' responsibility anymore. You're fully mine, and I can now you can treat you the good way or the bad way. And I told you, my first one was bad. My second was really good. You think I could go to Israel without going under the table? Who took care of under the table? My husband did. He kept it under the table and let me enjoy my trip by myself. Now, knowing her, she had an Islamic eschatology father. She wasn't even allowed to go by herself based on how her parents raised her. I was, and just like how I shared, my sister-in-law husband didn't like anything related for her to cover her face. Not at all. In fact, he hated it. But since she chose to do it on her own, she didn't say anything. But when you come from different principles and people are not ready to accept those principles, then your best choice is to find a man who's part of those principles. If someone's not ready to accept those principles where you come from, then things are not going to work. And as I said it again, her biggest, even though I agree with all the stuff she has said, her only downfall is that she should have married a British man. She should have not got married into UAE or Saudi. If she loved her British culture values very, very much, loved working, loved dressing, loved the way she was or whatever she did, she could have kept her job done. And that's what I say now, that if she kept her British value, it would not cut her away from her job how she was. But based on what she observed, and she didn't want to get rid of her British values, she didn't like the guy that she was married to and his vision and money. In fact, she probably would not like his mom either, because she stated that, he's taking all the money, yada, yada, yada. I don't get into my husband's stuff, what he does with the money. As long as he does my part, it's fine. I don't ask him all those questions. But she did. So it can only mean one thing, that you are not used to his customs. And she clearly stated, I got beaten up. Could you believe it? I got beaten up. She didn't. She didn't get physical beaten. I did. But if you were not into British customs, UAE customs back then your only flaw is you should have married someone from British customs, a British Muslim. That's the only downfall I disagree with. You could have, and you said it yourself 5 times that I needed to go back to the Britain. I need to go back to the British culture. I need to go back to the British culture. Well, then why'd you get married to someone with a different culture? Let me show you what culture clothing means, okay? Culture clothing, that people are like, oh, Islam is a culture. No, it is not. That's the religion. Your culture identity comes from here, and I'm going to show it to people right now on my screen, and people are actually going to see my culture when I enter events with my family for the first ever time. I'm going to share that. Not a lot of people see these things from me, but yeah. Entire screen. Window. Okay. Share. Okay. So we're going to go here, and I'm going to pull out some pictures. And if this thing can open, photos, always. Okay, so there we go. This is my family right here. Now, I'm not sure if she lived like this or not, but this is my family. And I can tell you that much. Nobody's a convert, and yes, everybody's religion. As you can see, you see people in suits, you see some people in hijab, you see some people well-dressed, and some have their own personal preferences. There's my cousin on the left in the red dress. She's married to a Christian right here. Ever ask her husband to convert? No, she didn't, and she has no children. She refused to do children. That's me in the pink. That's my cousins whose brothers live in the UAE. There's Shazia Khan right here, all these people. And that's another cousin of mine who married an Italian Christian. They've been dating since high school, and they became a couple. Next. That's the family part. Now you see people, some are in hijab, some are not in hijab. No, it's a mixed family. Some did choose to wear hijab, some chose not to wear hijab. It's always been like that. Always. There's no, you have to wear it. No, you either do or you don't. Right here. Now, I guarantee, since she had an Islamic father and a strict father with strict custom rules, she didn't have a life like mine. And as she stated that, oh, she just didn't like what he was doing, even though she was not physically beaten. I was physically beaten. Could you believe it? I was. But somehow encouraged me not to leave and give it another chance and trust my parents one last time before I turned away from them. And I did. Second time, I needed space. I needed space to think and see what I wanted to do. And I did. It took me some time, but after getting to know the partner, say, hey, okay, I do understand whatever your preferences are, then yeah, things did work. Yes, okay, when you do get old and time flies, there are certain things that partners just like, oh, I mean, come on, 19 years. It's not easy for partners to listen to everything for 19 years, but mine has. But bottom line is, this is where I disagree with her. And if people listen to her, I felt she should have just married someone from the that was the best thing for her than to get married out of UK. Because sometimes if you're not ready to let go of your ways or how you grew up, that causes problems. And it seems like she liked her UK culture life based on how she dresses like, comes like, religion or no religion. She really sounds like she loved her ways in the UK. And telling someone from the UK who lived a high level, lifestyle, doing what you want, and suddenly saying, hey, you're my wife now, I want you to follow this, then sometimes we also blame the parents. Why didn't her parents say, like, okay, do the parents believe in their kids' rights? My family gave me mine. Some of it, maybe not all, but some of it. And when I got married, I got more rights. If parents don't teach you those things, and if parents do not speak up for you that, hey, my daughter deserved those rights, then people take advantage of you, just like how it's happening to the Iranians. The politicians are taking advantage. And since there's men who live under that tradition, so whoever the females get married to, they're going to be abused in that tradition too, because, freedom's not granted to the state. Parents are not educating what freedom is. So whoever your partner is, it's going to go through the same customs, what's happening in Iran. But in Pakistan, no. UAE especially today, no. Saudi, my cousin is a Saudi Arab, and he married someone from Pakistan. It's over there. Lindsay Lohan married a Kuwaiti Arab. It's there. But first priority is the family. If the family is not going to educate its own child freedom, then obviously the child is going to have 1,000 questions when it enters the real world. And this is where I say, okay, yeah, okay, she became an ex-Muslim because of all the stuff she lived through all her life. Her parents never told her. Her parents never granted it to her. And now when she learned in the real world, she thinks, okay, this is what life is. My daughter is a religious scholar, and he always made me live under religion. This is what he made me do. And this is what my life is going to be like. So this is not the type of life I want to be of anymore. And she, left. However, I physically got beaten, and I was traumatized for like 1 or 2 years. It took me a while to cure myself. And I was isolated from the world. Things. I needed space to think to my thoughts before I would commit again. And somehow I said yes, and I've been 19 years together. That a lot of my high school friends are shocked that, hey, we didn't even date our high school partner, and we ended up breaking up who we thought would be our soulmate, but you're still together with yours. And things like that take time. It takes a lot of time to build an understanding and have a better understanding of each other's customs. Did we harass each other's? Oh, you need to pray, or you need to pray, or you need to wear this. We didn't. We didn't. I showed you a picture of my family customs, what my family was like. But since her father was always a scholar, a religious eschatologist, first priority is the father. Now look, everybody saw Ayatollah's kids, or should I say the IRGC leader's kids, how she was living a Western life, married someone in a white dress. First priority is the parents. If the parents don't teach you, then when you get into the real world, you feel like, oh, it's the religion and my parents never treated me this way. And you just want to change whatever you've been through or what you were taught. And that's why she became an ex-Muslim. I blame the parents because I lived just the way she did. I was actually physically beaten up before I said a yes to a second. But did I convert? No, I was physically beaten. But it taught me that what my parents, how they changed, how their standards changed, and how they told educated me where it's time to set your foot down. I did all those things what the Quran said: be a perfect wife, give the guy chances, everything you could possibly think of. Still, it was a dead end corner. I had to go, but my second one was successful. Yeah. What? Am I going to blame the religion, or am I going to say I have a successful partner? And if you're from different cultures, your best strategy to people out there, get married in the country that you grew up in. Don't get married outside. Find a Muslim man there who likes your way of clothing, dressing, thinking, almost anything you could find a Muslim man there. And I showed. Yes, that's how my sister got married. My sister got married to a Muslim man in America. It was like one of the highest, richest weddings. If anybody wants to see it, I'm willing to share my screen and show, like, hey, how did my sister get married? It was actually a really high standard marriage that not a lot of people know about. But yeah, her partner was a love marriage Muslim. And if somebody says, oh, wait a minute, you can't do a love marriage, Islam, no, that was a love marriage. They dated each other in high school. They've been together forever. And in fact, later the guy proposed. Yes, she was scared of my father. No kidding, she was very scared of my father. In fact, they live a high standard life today that she doesn't even care about children. She doesn't care. She doesn't want any. As long as her partner is sincere, she doesn't care about children. I'll share my screen. Give me a second, and I'll share a demo of my sister's wedding. Now, see, people don't really believe in these things. They're like, oh, it is not true. It is not true. It's true, right? Let me show you a sample of my sister's wedding on my screen. This is my sister's wedding, one of the richest weddings in all over Houston. Just a demo. My sister. Okay. This is my sister's wedding. That's me at the time. And the groom comes along and dances.
Or what?
Right here.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Oh my god, Asif, you saved me.
What? I mean, of course I am.
I have to tell you a secret, Asif. I've liked you all along.
You what?
Yeah, I was just playing hard to get.
What? How could you? I mean, I tried everything.
Yeah, but I'm a girl, and that's what girls do.
You know what? Goodbye.
No, listen.
No, you listen to me. Don't or man, over, finish, khatam.
No, Asif, don't go.
It's Asif.
I mean Asif.
Bye.
Then the groom's gonna show up. Yeah, my sister's was a love marriage. Now people are looking, well, that's not as common. I'm telling you, it's a love marriage. One of the highest weddings in Houston. This video's like very old. The groom's gonna show up. Where he is. And all these people are white, by the way. He's dancing with him. There's mostly white people, Christian friends dancing with him. You see it right there. But they're not looking. They're always dancing with him. He's best friend. That's my sister. That's love. That's the love marriage. Now somebody's honestly going to tell me, oh, but this, but that, yada yada yada. No, every year they fast, they do namaz, and Asif is like someone Jewish too. He doesn't eat he doesn't eat halal. My sister does, but he don't. So come to conclusion, there are people like that. Now somebody's gonna tell me, oh, but My uncle did a love marriage. Yeah, my uncle did one too. So somebody's going to tell me, but this is the religion. You must be kidding. And to this ex-Muslim, there's a lot of the things I do agree with, and there's some of the things I disagree with as a Muslim. I feel she should have married a bushman. Because I went through the same customs too. I said it in the stream that I was physically beaten. She was not. I was. And did I let go? No, I didn't. Then the only cure is for her to marry someone from the British. If she was so used to the British customs, British traditions, British way of life, she didn't like what UAE is back then compared to what UAE is now, then she should have married someone from the British. But that's not her to blame. It's the family. Since her family always raised her the old-fashioned way of girls, like don't talk to this person, just like how she said in her interview that I wasn't allowed to talk to this person, I wasn't allowed to talk to that person. So when she went into the real world, it was a discovery for her. My parents raised me that no, talk to this person. Christians used to come over at my house. All those things. My parents taught me all those things. But the change came from is when I met my past and everything changed for me and how stuff became. But I learned from it, learned to give chances, even got beaten up. But at the same time, could I just not just turn away from everything and not give a second person chance because it's a Muslim? No, I did. And today, 19 years. So all this stuff, your parents' preferences, how you grew up, what did you learn with time? And if your parents never teach you this stuff, it's always the parents to blame first. Because when the kids learn the hard way, it's hard to convince them to go back the way they were. Because you never warned them when you should have. And that's not something I'm going to blame her for, but I'm going to blame her parents for it. But at the same time, no, I disagree by saying this is not the religion. Because I lived the same shit she has lived. I was physically beaten. But my second one, it worked. And I showed you my tradition, my family, everything, nothing like that. Nothing. And yes, my niece-in-law and nephew-in-law who married a girl from Pakistan, she's fine with Saudi Arabia. I showed you Lindsay Lohan marrying an Arab. She's living in UAE today. The famous Indian actor Sunil Shetty, he's okay with his wife and kids growing up. Biggest person to remember is Mamdani, even though everybody hates Mamdani like hell. But his own wife is from Syria, but look at how she dresses, stuff. It's because she's used to another culture being a Muslim. Culture comes from the country, not the faith. That book is a faith. So if you cover your head and you go to pray to a mosque, that is a faith. That's not a culture, that's a faith. But some countries throughout time kept it like Islamic culture traditional way, right? And some of the Orthodox Jews who told me early, long time ago when I sat in the plane, some of those Jews being Orthodox, they sometimes believe in that lifestyle too, only live it the way the Torah tells you. Not what a Mizrahi Jew says, not what an Ashkenazi Jew says, not what a non-religion or a non-Jew says, only what the Torah says. Some Orthodox Jews live that way. Just what the Torah teaches. Live that way, eat that way, dress that way, go in there every day. Those are the Orthodox Jews. But that doesn't mean every country goes the same damn way. UAE is not Saudi. Bahrain is not Qatar. Kuwait is not Jordan. They have all their different preferences. And it's always going to remain like that. Pakistan is not Afghanistan. Even if they do become friends tomorrow, some things Pakistan is not going to follow what Afghanistan wants to follow. They're not going to agree to each other. It's always been like that. Russia's not going to follow the American way. Americans are not going to follow the Russia way of life, culture, religions, faith, whatever. This is the globe. And if you like your country customs, your customs of the country, then you need to marry in that country. Don't marry out of country. Find a Muslim in that country. Don't find a Muslim in another country. And that's where I disagree with her, and I feel that's what her parents should have told her as someone from the UK. I blame the parents. I don't blame her. I blame the parents, and that's the cause of her leaving the religion. Because of the way she was raised, the way she grew up, what she was told from her parents versus my parents. My parents told me. My parents told me she didn't get beaten up. I got physically beaten up in my past. I did. But I lived. I didn't escape. And now I have 19 years. I have a child and successful way of life. Nothing's bothering me in my life. Nothing. You think I could just come to Israel like that? Yeah, right. I came because many trusted me in my family. Now, am I going to say, is that religion or the family? It's the family. And I'm going to get ready to end my stream, and I hope people understand from this. Till I find the next ex-Muslim, I haven't found anything for Dan yet. I know he's watching, but let's see what I find. But I did Nuraya first. Take care, guys.